Greetings, brothers and sisters. So, I want to start off by talking about the zombie economy. In a video from last week, I was looking for a way to describe it, and this idea of zombie economy came to me. And it's not just an economy, but it is infiltrated every level of our existence. It could also be considered a vampire economy or a ghoul economy, but those have different connotations, right? Because vampires, ghouls, and zombies are all creatures that were dead in the sense they have no soul, but they're animated some way, right? It's like a creature that is, without any spiritual essence, but it refuses to just lie there and be dormant. It's still moving, it's still activated in one way or another. It's no longer a sovereign spirit, it is no longer supported by the spiritual essence that created its body, right? And they talk about dead bodies that souls drop into, like demonic souls that are drop-in souls, I think they call them. And they animate a body that's not theirs. But this is something else, right? This is where like the body itself continues to move even though the soul's gone. And that's our economy. And zombie economy just sounds the best to describe it. It should have died, or it died years ago. And it just keeps on moving along because no one wants to admit it's dead. It's too big to die. We're too dependent on it for it to die, right? And so it has to stay alive. Otherwise, our system and everything that we are depending on will collapse with it. With the economy goes, the system goes. And since there's no backup system and there's no way to fix the system, there's no way to bring the zombie economy back to life. The people running the economy, who know more than anybody else that the economy's a zombie economy, just pretend it's still alive, and the rest of us just don't know any better, right? We don't understand the larger picture of the economy and the soul crushing debt, and the fact that it should have collapsed years ago because it's a Ponzi scheme, and it did collapse years ago. We just haven't seen it, right? It's like a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it. Does it make a sound? Well, yeah, it does. If a zombie, if an economy zombifies and if no one hears it, is it still a zombie? Yeah, it is. But we just don't know. Like we haven't seen it. It's not a physical event, where you see, where something is pronounced dead because the heart no longer works or whatever it is on a physical level. The economy is something that's built on perception. And so as long as the wheels are turning, there's so many businesses that are bankrupt. There's so many financial institutions that are insolvent, but they just keep on chugging along. They're all a part of the zombie economy because it's being, kept alive through our belief in it, right? Through our delusionary belief that it's still functional when it no longer is. Eventually, the wealth is going to disappear. Like if you buy stock at $10 a share and it goes up to $1,000,000 a share, and you bought, let's say, 10 shares, and now you're worth $10 million, and you think you're worth $10 million, and that's going to continue to grow, and so you think, all right, I have $10 million, and then the inflation hits, and $10 million can only buy you like a loaf of bread. Like that's an extreme, but something like that, right? And so, or let's say $100,000 buys you a loaf of bread. Well, you're no longer rich, right? You have $10 million, but that is only 100 loaves of bread, right? So it's not real. The money isn't real. You didn't, Or more likely what happens is the stock plummets and it goes down to 1 penny a share. And now all that wealth has disappeared. And you say, well, where did that $10 million go? I bought this for $10 a share. So you paid $100, turned into $10 million, and now the $100 has disappeared into 10 cents. And where did all that wealth go? Where did your $99.90 go? And where did the $10 million that you had before go? Well, they're just gone. They've disappeared into thin air. And that's what's going to happen to our economy. All this wealth that people think they have, all the value they have in whatever it is, is going to disappear, either through inflation, where the money's devalued, or these institutions end up being they're no longer based in their fake brands, what their valuation is, because there's all this fraudulent evaluation of companies and all kinds of different assets that are really liabilities. And so liabilities are being sold as assets. Debt is now wealth. And at some point, that's just going to become reality. And all this wealth is going to disappear. And then there won't be any, pretending. It doesn't matter how much we all pretend, the economy is going to disappear because all the wealth is now gone. The imaginary wealth is now gone. And so the zombie economy can only go on for so long. And it can be, eating brains, whatever zombies do. And I think that's pretty much what it is doing. It's eating people's brains. And that's another way the metaphor works, right? And it's just trugging along, and one foot falls off, and a hand falls off here, and things just crawling along and just, chugging along, at least is keeping moving. But eventually, it's dead. I mean, it's the reality of it being dead has to, at some point, be the reality of what its state is. No longer animated, no longer moving around, no longer functioning in a natural way. So anyways, I put up my Journey Series 77, and there was an immediate issue with a copyrighted song from something, music that was in the background of a clip I was using. So that was a bummer, and that's being removed. And then it's now unlisted, but it'll be back being public in just a few hours or so, if it isn't already. And so I turned on the news today, and this guy said something wonderful. It was brilliant, and let's start here because it was just great. It's how I want to start this video because it's spectacular.
Donald Trump broke out the world's tiniest violin again.
This guy is a professional journalist, and I try to get this on my YouTube TV. That's why it's a little bit less good quality because I had to tape it with my iPhone. But he just opened a news show with saying a former president just broke out the tiniest violin again, right? That's how he started his newscast. Let's watch that again. It's epic.
Donald Trump broke out the world's tiniest violin again.
Also, he calls him Donald Trump and not the president or former president even. And so, it's so not, it's so not professional. This dude is named Jonathan Capehart, and I've never seen him before. Apparently he has his own show. And so, I have my YouTube TV set to CNN, and I have it taping a bunch of different programs because whenever I turn on the news, and I just turn it on for a couple of minutes, I'm like, oh wow, I got to cover this. Like, it's just so mockable. I mean, whenever I eat breakfast or lunch, I turn on the news, and sometimes I turn on like ESPN first because I don't even want to watch the news unless it's something I can't cover because of things that YouTube doesn't want you to cover or whatever it is. But other than that, I could always make a video or include some part of it because it's that bad. And so I had my YouTube TV set on CNN, and so I can come in here and tape it. But what happened was, this was on MNSBC, so I ran into the room to try to grab this show. But I'm now taping this guy's show because he's epic. And then, this happened.
Lashing out at the investigation swirling around him, including the one into the classified documents seized from Mar-a-Lago. We'll have the latest on his showdown with the DOJ. Republican governors shamelessly play politics with migrants' lives.
He said Republicans shamelessly play politics with migrants' lives. I mean, the level of non-objectivity here, and Fox has always been this way. Fox is taught MSNBC and CNN how to suck, and lose their objectivity. But he's saying this, like these horrible Republicans, this has to do with Ron DeSantis. But people are excited about the whole Martha Vineyards thing. I really haven't covered it. I don't know what to say about it. But he just called these people migrants. And as far as I know, they have broken the law by coming into our country, right? You can't call them migrants. I guess that's a way to describe them, but they are not legally migrating into this country. They're not doing it in a legal way. They are coming in without going through the legal immigration process. I come from immigrants. We all do in one way or another. Our, ancestors migrated from one place to another, and now there's countries and rules and whatever it is. And so if you obey those rules, then fine, right? But if you don't, then, it's your first act is to come in and commit a crime. And he's saying these people, like he's attributing rights to these people that they don't really have, right? I'm not saying it's legal for DeSantis to start exporting these people to different states and places. I don't know about the legality of that either. But this guy, Jonathan Capehart, is framing this like the Republicans are clearly the villains here because, that's their whole thing they do now at CNN and MSNBC.
Transporting them to Democratic strongholds with little or misleading information. New York City Mayor Eric Adams tells me how the Big Apple is coping. And a Senate candidate's stunning reversal.
I signed a letter with 120 other generals and admirals saying that Trump won the election, and damn it, I stand by my election. I have come to the conclusion, and I want to be definitive on this. The election was not stolen.
Say what?
Say what? This guy is great. Somehow he thinks it's the 70s.
Say what? Say what? Say what? Why more Republicans may be changing their tune now that a new NBC News poll is out this morning. I'm Jonathan Capehart. This is The Sunday Show.
So this guy's great. I got to remember to, because I'm taping this on YouTube TV next weekend to check this out. Because he's bringing a whole new thing to MSNBC. And it's fun. It's not professional, but it's funny as F. So going back to this zombie economy, right? So when Pope Francis instructs the Vatican entities to move all their funds to the Vatican Bank, well, that means they don't trust either the Vatican Bank's insolvent, which they all are, or he's saying that their assets, banks are going to start taking assets of their patrons, right? So if you have your money in a bank, chances are it's going to be absorbed, and this is where all this wealth is going to disappear, right? People are going to think they had money, it's just going to disappear, and there'll be no explanation, and that's when the economy, starts to look more and more like a zombie economy, when they just start taking stuff, or wealth is just disappearing left and right, and so that's coming to a bank near you. There's a bunch of stuff to do with Charles and the royal family. Let's start here. Not sure if it's actually a conspiracy theory, but a goat leading the Queen's funeral procession is still good. Still good for one. Did you all wonder why the goat was leading the way at the Queen's funeral procession? They did this on the Today Show when Al Roker traveled around the country. He did 50 states in so many days. It was some sort of record. A Rokathon is what they called it. And they had a parade for him when he came back. And then he was leading a goat. Like, goats are so prevalent in, all of this ruling class stuff. Moneyed monarchs, royal family's firm reportedly worth at least $23 billion. The firm, a nickname for the monarchy and its institutions coined by King George VI, is currently worth at least $23 billion, according to the Times of London. Over the past decade, the royal assets wealth, which includes buildings, land, minerals, mineral rights, art, and other treasures, increased faster than any other time. The first pieces of the estate were acquired by the Edward Confessor almost 1,000 years ago. The firm is more than just the royal family. It's the people who are the handlers and this whole entity, because it is, a big conglomerate that its centerpiece is this fake royal stuff, and this guy just isn't up to the task. Right? Queen's 8 grandchildren hold vigil at her coffin in Westminster Hall. And so they just won't put this corpse in the ground.
Well, I like these last several days.
Well, I think
It's so somber.
a atmosphere of somber reflection, just
Somber. I nailed it.
seeing there Prince Harry. What must he be thinking? Knowing that the route that they are walking now is almost exactly the route that they walked for their mother, Princess Diana.
Is that what he's thinking? What is he thinking? There's one of the big jewels. They want their jewels back in these countries that the royal family stole them from.
And I think that somber reflection here in London, interweaved with celebration.
These Marge Simpson hats are the best, right?
I think that really began to build yesterday when the Queen
I'm gonna have to take a nap. This is so somber.
arrived at Buckingham Palace, going through the gates of Buckingham Palace. Remember
Or hell, whatever you want to call it.
that something that she would be familiar with, she would do every day.
She'd do it every day. She'd go through the gates of Buckingham Palace every day. She did it.
But then, for the last time,
No more.
arriving at Buckingham Palace and meeting and being met by her family there, the King, who met his mother last night at Buckingham Palace for the last time. A last chance for them to spend time with her because, as we have mentioned...
All right, we saw this thing already here. Just soul-sucking. Why Biden finally spoke up about the buses of asylum seekers, but the Democratic president still faces pressure to coordinate a more organized response to the crisis at the U.S.-Mexico border. I mean, it's all falling apart for him. And this whole thing with Martha's Vineyard, right? Whatever's going on there isn't going to end up going well for him, and the Republicans are loving it. Evan Peters transforms into serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer for new Netflix series. And I was thinking about this as well. These were the two things I was thinking about today. Zombie economy, and how they can make anybody into a protagonist now. That's something I've been discussing for about, 5-6 years. And when did Maleficent 1 come out? Whenever that came out. Even before that, this is going all the way back to the show Lucifer and that show where, whatever it was, Dexter, that was a serial killer, that they could make the devil and serial killers into protagonists, right? And I was watching I don't know what it was, a show, I guess it was, the movie is called Dog, right? And it's about the ex-military guy and this military dog, and in the middle of the movie, spoiler alert, he breaks into a family's marijuana farm, and they think he's working for a cartel, and all this stuff happens, but he ends up going to kill the people. It's a couple, and I was thinking about this, how they can make any protagonist, you root for any protagonist, right? And so this guy's dog his out-of-control dog wanders into these people's business and their home, and then, they resist in some way, and this guy ends up, thinking he's got to kill them. And, you look at that show 24 where Kiefer Sutherland is torturing people, right? And it's based in a bunch of faulty narratives that, if you know anything about the truth community, it's bogus, right? It's based in these faulty narratives that the intelligence community and the media and the government gives us. And then all these other shows where Maleficent, where they started to make villains the heroes. And I noticed this for little kids' movies. They've done it now with Cruella de Vil, Cruella de Evil, or Cruella the Devil, right? and, all these serial killers that end up being the protagonists. And the way Hollywood works now and the way people's brains are, they show you how somebody is a villain, and you want them to suffer. But then they can reverse the narratives and make that same character a hero, and you want them to succeed. And it's not going to get everybody, but, the majority of people are going to go along with it. They can make anybody into a hero and villain. They did it in reality TV shows, just the way they cut the footage and the way they frame it, the music they put around the person, the lighting, the tone, the way that they are able to, make somebody manipulate the emotions of the audience and turn a hero into a villain or villain into a hero or whatever it is, right? And so much so the protagonist can do a lot of messed up things, and you'll root for that protagonist, right? You'll root for these people who are degraded morally. I mean, the Seinfeld show, all of those characters were horrible people. Think about how many shows there have been over the years where, The Simpsons, and, you just end up rooting for whoever they frame as the protagonist, whether they deserve it or not, whether what they're doing is right, whether it violates your moral code or not. It's just, you get subjectified to rooting for the protagonist in the movie, and not everybody's going to, if you don't, you're usually not going to watch the movie. If you don't root for the protagonist, you're not going to watch it. But they can do this with politicians or anybody. They can just frame these narratives, and no matter what that person does, like Donald J. Trump saying he could shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and not lose any support, it's because of this idea where people are convinced somebody's a protagonist, a hero, and they can do no wrong. It happened for the Cubies. It happens for the people on the left with Jojo Magoo. And they will ignore every sign, every, little idiosyncratic personality trait that's deviant in some way. They'll ignore all that stuff and support this, these characters, no matter what they do. And that's scary as F if you think about it. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the Apocalypse and the Ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.